So welcome everyone. I'm Blake and I will be covering the class tonight. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet tonight, and elders past, present and emerging. Before we start, would anyone like to share the traditional land that they're coming from today? Just as a bit of an icebreaker.
Ewan?
Yep. Thanks, Kathleen. And Stacey, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm from Gundagara.
Gundagara land. Fantastic. I'm from Garang. So yeah, just a bit of an icebreaker. It's interesting to know the lands you're on and just the people that inhabited it for 50,000 years plus. So it's extra important, just on that note too, this unit that we've covered is work with diverse people. So it's in the youth work and community service sector, you're going to work with people not only from all over Australia and all different backgrounds from around Australia, but all over the world. So who's started this unit? Like, who started working on it? Sorry, Tracy, you're on mute. I didn't get that.
Perhaps I've done the first assessment.
Okay, yep, fantastic.
I'm not quite sure now. I think
That's all right.
Just today.
That's all right. That's all right. Did you have any trouble with the first part of the assessment?
No.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty good.
That's good. That's good. Kathleen. Are you on mute, Kathleen?
We all had a holiday.
Yeah, that's it. Which is highly recommended too. I hope everyone did have a bit of a breather from all of this.
So don't ask difficult questions.
All right, I'll go a bit of an easier one, or it depends on where you stand. When we are talking about diversity, what does it mean to everyone? Yep, Stacey.
Diversity means different cultures, different beliefs, religions, just individuality that believe in certain things.
Yep. Fantastic. Why is diversity important in a workplace? Yeah, Kathleen.
For it's respect. Diversity actually brings a whole lot of different elements to a workplace, and particularly in community services, we're working with a whole lot of people from different backgrounds, and not necessarily just their backgrounds, but who they identify as. So, you know, we need to acknowledge diversity in the workplace, in terms of respecting people who are different to us. When I say different to us, who identify differently to us, have had different experiences to us, and yeah, it's about respect and inclusion of all of those differences that make a person who they are.
Thanks, Kathleen. Thank you. And yeah, that's covered a lot of it. That's good. That's good. Did everyone get that and understand that? And does anyone have anything they'd like to add on to it? So I just see in the chat here, Caitlin's put in there some people that can't log on. I think the invite for this was sent out by Vicky, and it should be in your Google calendars for anyone who's struggling to log on. Rightio, does anyone else want to add on to why diversity is important in the workplace? Yep, Stacey.
Helps bring education.
It does. So I like to think of diversity as if like you've got everyone like who is exactly the same. You're going to get a repeat of ideas. The ideas aren't going to develop any better, or nothing new is going to come of it. If you have people with sort of different ideas and different backgrounds, there's several more approaches to a task, or several more ways to get something done. So when working in a workplace, what do you have to be aware of when working in a diverse workplace? Like maybe some legislation or acts and stuff like that, policies and procedures.
Um,
You'd have to be careful with like anti-discrimination working under that act.
Yep. Do you know the year at all? Just as a trick question.
1975 CTH.
Fantastic. So you can see that's it is quite an old act. It can do with a bit of a revision and update, but yeah, that's the act there. Kathleen?
the organisation's policies and procedures.
Yep. Do you know what some of the policies and procedures would be at all? What they would cover?
Look, I haven't had a look at them, so no.
No, that's all right. That's all
Put me on
right.
mute.
Yep, Stacey.
Customer complaints and what the procedures would be for those.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, yep, that's some, yeah. Does anyone else want to throw anything? I'll just point out too, there's no wrong answers here. This is for everyone to sort of learn a bit, and it's an open forum. Has anyone seen, like, in your current workplace at all, has anyone seen the policies and procedures around discrimination?
Do you mean like sexual orientation discrimination, or?
Yep, stuff like that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that's good.
Religion, right to religion,
Yep.
right to be safe in the workplace. I don't know. Is that right?
Yep. That's correct. Yeah. So your company will have policies around that, and there is legislation around that too, and acts. Yep, Kathleen.
I've done my research. So
That's
it's
all
not
right.
organisational policies and procedures, but I just want to go into the international legislation.
Yep.
So we've got the Universal Declaration of Human Rights for anti-discrimination, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and the International Labour Organization Convention on Discrimination in Employment and Occupation. Oh,
Fantastic.
hang on.
Age discrimination, or?
Yeah.
That is a part of it. Yep.
Yeah. I'm just looking. So that would come under legal frameworks in Australia. You've got the Racial Discrimination Act of 1975, which Tracy mentioned, the Disability Discrimination Act 1992, and the Fair Work Act 2009, the Privacy Act 1988, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, or Work Health and Safety Act, depending on what state you're in. Although there is, I know I've done a Cert 4 in health and safety, there is a model health and safety act that the state health and safety acts have drawn on when they're making their legislation. So that model health and safety act is a federal act. And then there's the Competition and Consumer Act 2010 and the Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993. But that's in the United States. So I don't know if we have anything there. Have to read the acts.
Yeah, well, that's
Boring.
that's a lot of research there. That's awesome.
Boring.
If you are confident, you can put some of them. Let's copy them into the chat so people can have a look at them. If you're confident in doing that. If not, that's all right. People can do their
Okay.
research.
So I've really cheated here. If people go into their Work with Diverse People quiz, the online quiz, and go to question 6 and 7. Okay. So did I do the International Labour Organization Convention on Discrimination, Employment and Occupation? I think I did.
You did.
So
you did.
go to questions 6 and 7, and you will find, and even question 9, you'll find where those acts were developed, where they've come from. So yeah, it's all there in the actual quiz.
Fantastic. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for sharing that.
So hi Blake. Hi Blake.
yeah.
I have some more information about it. So you just ask like at your workplace, what act do you follow? So the Fair Work Act, basically the first one in Australia, I think so, which is passed in 2009, if I'm not wrong. Then we have Australian Human Rights Commission Act, 1986. Then every state in Australia, they have some like anti-discrimination or equal opportunity acts. So if you are in Victoria or Queensland, they have different acts. So I'm in South Australia now. So we don't have an as such act for our state. Because again, in this act, all acts does not apply for each case, because in the discrimination, there are few types. Some are direct, some are indirect, some comes under harassment, some come under victimization. So it's comes under different category. So that's all I know about.
Yep, no, that's good. That's good, and that's very handy. It's especially pointing out that you've there are different ones in each state, which is like each state will have the higher up federal like policies and acts and all that, and then your states will have their versions of it off of what the federal government has put forward. So I do sound like a bit of a broken record, but why, in discussing these, why are they all important within the workplace? So Kathleen.
So I just want to say we've missed one, which is really important, and that is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know who put that one together at all?
Yes, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Sorry, I've lost my study brain. It's the United Nations.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, put that together. And with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, what they wanted people to do was to sign a treaty for various countries to sign a treaty to say that they agreed with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Yep.
However, in Australia, we didn't actually, we did sign the treaty. We have a convention of human rights in Australia. Is that correct?
I'm pretty sure that's correct there, yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that too. And you have done have done your research. Sorry, you're on mute again there. So in my question before, why are these important in the workplace? Why are they important to understand these for your role as a youth worker? Ash, yep.
Yeah, so I don't have much experience in this industry because actually I'm a chef, but
Yep.
I just joined like 3 months back. So till the time, what I got to know is because fairness and equality is very important in this kind of jobs, as well as is a kind of a legal compliance at the moment. You need to have those acts on your workplace and you need to follow them because
Yep.
it helps to improve your workplace morality as well as productivity because everyone is treated in same way no matter where they are from. And
Yep.
of course it's helps to create diverse and inclusive workforce to help community.
Yep.
And that's a kind of a social responsibility, I can say, towards towards community. So yeah.
It is, yeah. Stacey, I've seen your hand up before. If you still wanna.
Me? Yes. Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't shut up, do I?
That's all right.
I'll try to hold back actually with the next few questions, guys. So I'm going to try not to answer, and I'll let other people try to answer instead of me. But I just want to say though that what Ash just said is very important, and as well as building a good solid team, it also means that if you can understand each other's diversity, then you provide better customer service, whatever that customer might be, or whoever that customer might be. It might be in the community services field, it might be a patient in a hospital bed, it might be somebody in a restaurant. So, you know, it extends from the actual workplace to the people that we're serving.
Yep, that's correct. Thank you. And yeah, sorry, Stacey, you had your hand up before, unless yours has already been covered.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say it gives us guidelines to work in between to give a better understanding and guidance with our roles in our positions in our jobs.
Yep, fantastic. So in my opinion for it, it's there to protect you and it's there to protect the person next to you. You don't want to go into the workplace and feel uncomfortable or stuff like that. You want to feel like you can be yourself and be genuine in the workplace. So why would those legislations and acts and all the information we've covered, why would they be important for our clients? So we covered why they'd be important in the workplace, but why would they be important to our clients? Yep, Stacey.
Offers our clients safety.
It does. Kathleen, you had your hand up. Are you on mute again?
Okay.
Yep, I can hear you there. Yep. Oh, sorry, Ash, then you have your hand up.
So it helps because any customer or any client needs that I can say fairness towards them. So it's kind of a help to build our trust and reputation in the market because they are our clients basically. And of course, it helps to give us inclusive service delivery because every time it will be same for each of our client, as well as it's provide automatically it's provide the customer satisfaction in that way.
Yep.
And of course, it covers legal and financial risk. So if we made any mistakes, it comes under kind of act, and then it helps us to cover those legal and financial risk. And of course, there is a competition in market, so we need to be stand out, and we need to deliver our clients. And of course, because of all of these factors, it helps to create that long-term partnership with the client, so that client will not go somewhere else and they will stick to us in the future.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Beautiful.
And that's it, is it is the main thing, to make sure that you keep like the first things first is your client. You want them to be happy. You want them to keep coming back and keep feeling comfortable to be themselves there. It does sound like common sense to sort of be nice to your client, be nice to your person you're working with, respect their diversity, but you would be surprised there are situations all the time in the workplace where things go wrong. Sometimes people don't notice what they're doing or don't notice what they're saying it or how they're saying it. So it is good to be aware of these so people are aware maybe this isn't appropriate to discuss, or maybe that's not appropriate to say. That's why these things exist. Rightio. What does everyone think cultural safety is? So right, throw it out there, let it start flowing. Cultural safety. What does everyone think it is?
Oh, okay. No.
Yep, Kathleen, fire away. Hey, you're on mute again, Kathleen. We can't hear you.
Unmute. Tracy put her hand up first.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Tracy put her hand up first.
Okay, yep. Fire away, Tracy. I think you're on mute. I still can't hear you, Tracy, sorry. It's all right. Sorry. Ian, we've got Ian with his hand up.
I think cultural safety is kind of I don't want to say it's a law, but it's a kind of a rule, law and a rule, where we try to protect the different cultures and try to create kind of a safety environment where people can think that they are respected and looked up for, taken care of.
Yep. That's good. That's good. We've got a couple more hands up. We've got, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, is it Haid?
Yes, Heidi.
Haid, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I guess on my own understanding of cultural safety, it is the practice of creating an environment where people feel safe and respected regarding with some culture.
Yep, that's good. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Kathleen, you have your hand up.
It means that the workforce needs to educate themselves on the cultural needs of people with with people who have a culture that isn't the same as their own. So it's a process of the organisation ensuring that they are educated so that they can provide culturally safe care for their client.
Yep, fantastic. And Ash, you got your hand up?
Sorry, once again, because I'm attending class after a long time, so I'm excited. Okay.
That's okay.
For me, it's a kind of environment where all all cultures have same respect, same value, and there is no description or any harm for any particular culture. That's all. Thank you.
Well said, well said, well said. We've got Nathan, he's put in the chat here, cultural safety refers to an approach in healthcare, education, and other sectors that acknowledge and respect the cultural identities and values and practices of individuals, particularly those from marginalized or minority groups. It involves creating environments where people feel safe and supported in expressing their cultural identity without fear of discrimination, bias, or misunderstanding. Thanks for throwing that in there, Nathan. Right, yeah, does anyone else want to add anything else onto cultural safety? So you can sort of see these the legislations lead into this cultural safety and acceptance and awareness, just general awareness of separate cultures. So to make sure that everyone is safe in the workplace, everyone is happy in the workplace. Rightio. So we'll try to get everyone to put it in the chat too, if you can. What are some qualities that make people diverse? So Kathleen.
Things that make people diverse, do you mean, so what sorts of cultural behaviours, for example, they would
or
display?
Just in general, what makes you diverse? What
So,
are some qualities that make you diverse?
so do you mean things like sexual diversity and diversity in dress?
Yep, that's it.
Diversity in language, diversity in accent,
Yep,
diversity in food,
yep,
in religion,
yep,
in the way you have grown up and the way you view the world.
yep. That's great. We'll give a couple other people a chance to answer too.
Okay, I'll stop.
That's all right.
Yep.
That's all right. Stacey, you had your hand up, unless yours was already covered. You're good. You're good. Heidi again. What was yours?
Yeah. For me, the diversity is international and cultural understanding.
Yep.
It's a deep understanding with a different culture and different races that makes us diverse in particular way. Thank you.
Yep. So like your cultural background and stuff like that. Tracy, you've got your hand up.
It's already been covered.
Already been covered. That's all right.
Yeah, you know, race, sexual preference, religious beliefs.
Yep.
Things like that.
That's all right. That's all right. Stacey, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I feel like being empathetic is a good quality to have when you're working with people from diverse backgrounds, and showing compassion and understanding, and obviously creating a non-judgmental safe space where they can feel free to speak, to act, even take you. So for example, Aboriginality, taking you to ceremonies, that sort of stuff. So knowing that you want to engage and be a part of their culture, and just to get a better understanding of it, even if your beliefs are different to theirs.
Awesome. That's really well said there. We've got, is it Jumi? Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. Differences in race, sexuality, origin, customs, cultures, among other things that make us diverse. There is one that people are missing, and you will work with it in the youth service industry. What do you think it is? What quality that makes someone diverse, which is very common? Starts with D. So disabilities, there we are. Yep, thank you. Put that in there. Thank you. So yeah, disability. So people with disability, they're also diverse, and they do need that extra bit of understanding and that extra bit of time and empathy, as Stacey was saying. Ian, yep, you got your hand up.
What about people with mental illnesses?
Yep. So that they are also diverse. Yep. Fantastic. Thank you. Kathleen.
Age.
Age is another one, and it is a
Yep.
big one in the
Yep.
workplace. You are going to work with people of varied ages in the workplace, and from personal experience, it's not age discrimination is probably one of the most common forms of discrimination you will get in the workplace, and it does work both ways, and it is common and is there in your face. I'd say the top three that you would experience in the workplace are age discrimination, quickly followed by sexism, and then racism in the workplace. You will see a lot. You will hear all the time in the workplace of they're too young to understand that, or they're too old to get this, or use this bit of technology. Though it doesn't sound like in your face discrimination, it is. If that made the person, like the comment or the statement made that person uncomfortable, then it is classed as discrimination. And it's good to be aware of how to approach situations like that. So you may not see it as, like, you might make an offhanded joke at someone, and it's like, no big deal, no big deal. But if that person, like, you don't know how that person's taken it.
Can I just say that as an older person in the workforce, that technology, computers, anything, in that area can make me feel extremely anxious. And people do just brush you off, and they say things like, look, I didn't understand that. Can we work through it in a different way? And a young person who's very good with computers will say, no, I'm going to tell you once more, and then you've got to understand it. And that's not how my old brain works. So, the computers in the workplace are very, very prevalent, and they can actually make you feel as if you don't fit in the workplace at all.
Yep. And then added on top of that is comments like, you don't understand this, or you're not getting this, like, can you hurry up with this, can be on the lines of that age discrimination.
Yeah, and what they don't appreciate, though, is that the level of experience you bring in terms of the fields that you're working in is just so valuable.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not respected. That people will see your incompetence with a computer before they will see the experience, which is an absolute gem that you bring to the workplace.
Yep, that's correct. That's correct. And thanks for sharing with that with us. That bit of information, Kathleen. That's good to be aware of, and it is good to be aware of, and it's how you approach that situation and assist within the workplace. Rightio. So now we know sort of like the basics behind it, and we've covered some of the legislation. What are some of the rights and responsibilities of your employer around this? Yep, Stacey, fire away.
An employer has the responsibility to make sure that their employees are educated on policies and procedures about customer service, just how the organisation itself runs.
Fantastic. I couldn't have thought of a better way to answer that. That was really well done. Yep. Is it Irina?
Yeah. I'm just wondering what the lesson is all about, because we didn't get the link. So we just joined now, and I'm not sure what we're discussing tonight.
So this is just sort of a open forum for
Oh,
the
okay.
work with diverse people.
Mm.
So it's the recording for the actual like PowerPoints and all that has been recorded by Vicky, and it has been, I think it's been sent out, don't quote me on it, or it is about to be sent out. So this is just to help people through their assessment, and if they're having any trouble with their assessment, and
Right.
covering all points of it. So going back to what Stacey was saying too, it is the employer's responsibility to ensure that they have things in place. The reason why you might go to work and you might have 100 meetings throughout the year, and every time there's a policy being brought up, you think, oh, why are we discussing this again? The reason is to make sure you're aware of that policy or procedure or legislation if it changes, stuff like that. So it's your employer's responsibility to let you know when stuff like that changes, let you know when the updates are there, and let you know what is appropriate in the workplace. What are some of the employees' rights and responsibilities around diversity? Yep, Stacey.
We have the right to our own safety in the workplace.
100%. Yep, that is correct. On that side, the answer to the responsibilities is very close to that. Who wants to fire that in? Yep, Kathleen.
Sorry. We have a responsibility as employees to follow the policies and procedures as far as is reasonably practical.
Yep.
So, yeah, and if it's not, and if it goes against the ethics of the ACWA, then an employee must discuss that with their supervisor.
That's correct. That's correct. Stacey, you got your hand up?
We have the responsibility to keep the privacy and the confidentiality of our clients.
Yep, that's correct. That's correct. So the one I was aiming for, Stacey brought up, we have the right to feel safe in the workplace. The other side to that is we have the responsibility to ensure that people feel safe in the workplace. Same with the employers. They have the responsibility to ensure that safety is in the workplace and discrimination doesn't happen in the workplace. And they have the right for that to be respected within the workplace.
Excuse me, Blake.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you, but some people still can't get in. I just got a notification. Can you somehow send them a link or something?
I don't think I can necessarily send them the link. I've jumped on this one myself. The link that you've got, you're more than welcome to forward on to. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I'll do that. All right. Oh, I'll see how okay. I don't have their emails addresses.
No, yep, Stacey.
I got in through my portal. So going.
But we didn't get it. We didn't get that link.
Oh, on the portal.
No, you don't.
No.
So,
Okay.
so Irina, I had trouble at first, and yes, normally we get a link when we receive our email. But what I did was I went right back, as Stacey said, to the portal, and you start from scratch on your portal, and it'll say join class.
No, it's not. We've all tried all that. It's not there. I just got the link now sent to me in an email.
Yeah, the link should have been sent via email and to your Google Calendar too.
No, I didn't get any of that.
Okay.
I had an email from my, hold on, let me tell you who it's from. Just a minute ago. From Liz.
From Les, okay.
And she sent the link. and she apologized for the confusion because most of us can't get in. I don't know why I suddenly got that link sent to me.
It might just be sort of just a rough start to the year. Everyone sort of started back. There might be a bit of kinks in the machine to go through. I do apologize for any errors like that. It should be all sorted out by our session next week. This is being recorded though. This session is being recorded, so it will be sent out to everyone the regular way anyway. So
yeah, just that some people haven't, we can't get into it in any way, shape, or style. And so they're really, really frustrated.
Yeah, I don't blame them. Yeah, I unfortunately I don't have the contact list for this class. I'm not able to flick it out myself.
Yeah.
Rightio. So moving on to our rights and responsibilities again. What are some of the rights and responsibilities for our customers and clients? Stacey, got Stacey here.
Yeah, clients have the responsibility to keep their personal information up to date.
Yep. Fantastic. Kathleen, you got your hand up.
To respect boundaries.
Yep, that's correct. Yep. Yeah, Stacey.
Clients have the responsibility to turn up to their appointments and to notify us if they are not able to attend.
Yep, that's correct. That's correct. So one of the most common common branches for your rights for your employers, your employees, and your clients is that everyone has the right to feel safe. It's the most important one. Following that is everyone has the right to feel included. You'll see throughout this unit, especially if you've gone through the learner guide and stuff like that, is you'll see like inclusion a lot. It's inclusion. Make sure that everyone is included within anything that's done, and that's staff, employers, employees.
Wait, what?
So what Australians, this is another question from the assessment. Which Australian organisation deals with complaints regarding breaches of human rights and discrimination?
Yeah.
Yep, Kathleen.
The Australian Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission.
That's correct. That's correct. Yep. So they look after, and you could contact them, and they have ombudsman and stuff like that where they can assist you and help you out with anything like that. And it is recommended if you ever experience something like this in the workplace, do reach out. If you experience any form of discrimination or discomfort, reach out. It's important. Nothing will get fixed if no one says anything. Yes, Ash, you've got your hand raised.
In this, of course, Australian Human Rights Commission, like AHRC, they are the main one, but with the state-wise, there are few because I know a couple of them. So Equal Opportunity Commission, that is EOC in South Australia, and then Anti-Discrimination in NSW, and then Queensland Human Rights Commission is QHRC, that's in Queensland.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Stop it! Stop helping!
Has anyone heard of, before sort of diving into this unit or this qualification, has anyone heard of it, like any of these terms, like the Australian Human Rights Commission and the Australian Human Rights Tribunal and stuff like that? Has anyone had any dealings or heard of them before diving into this? Yes, Ash, you've got your hand up.
Like, yes, I do, because every country has some kind of human rights commission. So when I came to Australia, our human resources team give some idea about our rights and client rights as well.
Fantastic.
Not deep insights, but yeah, have some idea about.
Yep.
The letter is in the way
Kathleen.
twice.
I was a union rep
That's not.
for the nurses in Victoria when we went on our first big strike. So the New South Wales nurses are doing that at the moment. And the Fair Work Commission, we sort of consulted with the Fair Work Commission there. They were sort of part of the process of resolving the dispute that we had with the Victorian government.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's the Fair Work would jump in on stuff like that. And they're another one that deal with discrimination in the workplace. It is good, like you don't ever want anyone to experience discrimination in the workplace. You don't want anyone to ever feel uncomfortable in the workplace, but the chances are you will see it. If it doesn't happen to you, you will witness it. And it is important to know how to approach like what your approach will be in dealing with that situation. Yep, Kathleen again.
So that's really very interesting because I went to work in a place that was becoming multicultural, and it was in the days when that multiculturalism wasn't as broad as it, or it wasn't, there was not as great a representation of people from different countries in this particular workplace. And as part of the nurses, part of the nurses' complaints were about career structure. And they introduced a level of practice called clinical nurse specialist. And there were 3 girls from Asian backgrounds who were denied the clinical nurse specialist classification, which gave them an increase in wage and also gave them the opportunity to predominantly work in a particular area of surgery. So it was the operating theatres that we were working in. And I represented those girls to get them recognised as clinical nurse specialists because, I advocated, as a union rep, I advocated for them to get the clinical nurse specialist recognition. Another one there too was the discrimination against Catholics. Because this organisation did a lot of terminations of pregnancy, and I was actually an associate charge nurse, and they wanted to put me in doing gynecology, and they said I would have to participate in terminations of pregnancy. And I said that I would refuse to do that. And I was bullied no end. And I actually did go to Fair Work and stated my case, and I then didn't have to do that. But life was difficult. After I did that, life was quite difficult. So that discrimination, when you're the brunt of it, it's a really uncomfortable experience.
It is.
So having experienced that, I would be, I think it just makes you more alert about discrimination and what it feels like to be discriminated against.
Thank you so much for sharing that too, Kathleen. As a side question, what do you think was discriminated against there under diversity? What quality of diversity do you think was discriminated against there? Just as a bit of a case study.
So there was race and religion.
Right. Yep. That's correct. Yep. So that's what was like discriminated against was race and religion. Also, your spiritual views too were discriminated against.
Yeah.
In the end, which is sort of combined with religion. So as you can see, like you don't necessarily think of that being a discrimination situation, but it is. You don't have to necessarily be the target of something like that, but if you witness it, you can still approach places like Fair Work and the Human Rights Commission and stuff like that, and put a complaint in and speak to someone there, and they will put you through the right channels. Because as I was discussing before, and as we were all discussing before, it is everyone's right to feel comfortable in the workplace, feel safe and feel respected. Yep, Kathleen again.
Unfortunately, back then, and I don't know if it's the same now, but if you did raise concerns or you did disagree with management, you were labelled as difficult. And when you're labelled as difficult, you get warnings about your performance, so they try to get rid of you.
Yep, yep.
Which I know that still happens in some workplaces. I experienced that recently when I was trying to implement some work health and safety stuff, and I was given a warning, and I thought, I'm not dealing. I don't want to deal. I'm too old to deal with this stuff. So I refused to go to their meeting where they were going to tell me, you know, to not be difficult. And they use things like, they use terminology such as "you're not a team player." Yeah. That's, you know, they use this broad terminology as an excuse to look towards ending your employment. So I hope nobody else experiences that, and I would hope that in the community services arena, that people who advocate are not seen as difficult.
Thank you very much for sharing that again. And as Caitlin's put in here, it does still happen. She's just found out how hard it is for new mums to get back into the workplace. It is the discrimination still happens with new mothers. It's there's a lot of discrimination around that too. It's are they going to be able to work full time? Will they work full time? It's sort of a write-off, which is incredibly unfortunate. But you need to know, as we are discussing here, the lines to go through and the channels to go through, and don't be afraid to reach out. Like, it's the worst thing you can do in a situation like that is remain silent. So don't be afraid to reach out, even if it's just a phone call to Fair Work and stuff like that, just to find out. Silence is the worst enemy in situations like that. So we will have a break shortly in about 5 minutes. I'll have a 10-minute break. I do have a scenario though, straight out of the unit, that I want everyone to have a think about while they're on their break. So let me just open it up. So I'll read this. Actually, I might paste the scenario into the chat there so everyone can see it. Just have a bit of a think about. So it goes, the scenario is Mario is a part-time support worker at First Access. He holds a Certificate 4 in Community Services. He is studying for a Diploma of Mental Health. Since he started this job at the service, he was never approved to participate in any professional development sessions, while other support workers completed 2 sessions each year. One day, he overheard 2 staff members whispering about him. They said that he doesn't need the professional development because he learned enough in his other diploma course at TAFE, and that he is a young guy. And sorry, I'm trying to scroll and read at the same time. His other diploma course at TAFE, that he is just a young guy. is it better if they keep telling him how to do things? So have a bit of a read and a bit of contemplation of that scenario. Some of the questions around it is, what is the legal and ethical issue in the scenario? What do you think the impact on Mario is in the situation? Review the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and identify the articles that are being breached in Mario's story. And what can Mario do to protect his rights? So just something to think about. We'll have a discussion of the scenarios in this unit when we come back from our short 10-minute break. So before, I will just stop the recording now too. Rightio. So one of our questions in the unit is, for each historical issue, describe what happened and the impact on First Nations communities today. So one of the events is the British colonisation and power imbalance. So what impacts does that have on First Nations communities today? Yep, Stacey, fire away.
It can cause mistrust with inside community services, those sorts of places.
Yep, that's correct. Yep, well done, well done. Who else wants to throw something in?
Discrimination.
Yep.
You know,
That's yep.
I mean, that's the major thing is that you know, like they were treated as non-citizens basically, and even to the point where when the British came in initially, they were you know, as Kathleen pointed out in our study group, they were treated, Australia was treated as terra whatever, like in other words, not inhabited by people, and Aboriginal people were treated as fauna and flora, which is a bit pathetic, really. You know, it's a bit.
It is. Yeah.
You know, I mean, it goes that bad. So yeah, so.
Thanks for sharing that. And there, that is true. They weren't even really second grade citizens. It was sort of just not even on the charts.
Yeah. Actually, I've just read a very good book. It's called This Is Where You Have to Go. And it's about an Aboriginal girl who fell pregnant, and she went to a doctor in Manly in Sydney, and the doctor said, this is where you have to go. And she sent her to the Waitara Mothers and Babies Home. And then she went up there thinking that the nuns were going to help her. And what they did was they actually forced her into signing papers, using drugs and whatnot to have her baby adopted.
Oh no! Yeah, right.
So that went on wholesale in actual fact, and there's been a massive inquiry about it. So if anybody wants to read the book, just text me or send me a message on the chat on our study group chat, and I'll give you more detail.
Fantastic.
It's a very interesting book.
Yeah. Thank you. Kathleen, you have your hand up. You're on mute, Kathleen. Sorry. It happens.
I always do that. So as Christine said, I did put in the chat that the Aboriginal people were treated as, or the land was considered as terra nullius, i.e. no people living on the land, and they were considered as fauna. And the British, when they came, they at first they exchanged gifts, and before you knew it, the British were hunting Aboriginal people, and with the idea of basically decimating the population. And so what they've tried to do is, what do they call it when you try to knock out a whole race of people?
Genocide.
Genocide. So what they wanted to do was genocide. And to do that genocide, they also, there was also the stolen generation. That was also part of genocide, and the idea there was to remove language. In particular, language was something that was targeted. And I think there's one Northern Territory group of Aboriginal people who still speak only and their Aboriginal language. So the Aboriginal people had they had different nations. Actually, I won't go into the big story, but what it's all caused is intergenerational trauma.
It has.
So where the Australian society has been very focused on integrating people from other countries, we are really falling short in terms of the services that we provide and the way that we respect Aboriginal people. And one of the big problems today is high levels of youth and female incarceration of Aboriginal people. There's troubles going on in Alice Springs at the moment, and all sorts of strategies are trying to be put in place. And there's now a recognition that white law and the white way of punishing is not applicable to Aboriginal people, and that Aboriginal elders are now starting to be allowed to get involved. So there's this very slowly evolving respect for Aboriginal people, but that intergenerational trauma, remains with them all. And, the genocide was pretty good, because if you look around, apart from right up there in the north, and I'm going to describe what we see, and when you ask the question of what's the difference between race and ethnicity, and race is a social construct that people apply to people. So up in the Northern Territory, you've got those very dark black Aboriginal people, whereas as you come down the coast and down into other areas of Australia, the actual purity, I suppose, of Aboriginal blood has been diluted through the white by the white
Yep, I understand. Yeah, and it is
by reproduction with white people.
Yep.
And the thing is, though, that these Aboriginal people, they have tried to maintain and retain their ways of living. It hasn't been considered as socially acceptable. And they end up, the trauma means that they end up either incarcerated or unemployed in council housing that's not even fit to live in. I could write a book, so I won't say any more.
Thank you very much for sharing all that,
Kathleen. It's that intergenerational trauma. There's a great book called Dark Emu, written by Bruce Pascoe, and it describes Aboriginal civilization and the way that they did things, that they weren't just hunters and gatherers, but they also had crops. They built houses. It's a really eye-opening read.
A lot of that sort of stuff has been lost to history as an effort to degrade them as people themselves. But yeah, it is. I do encourage anyone who is interested in the topic or just want to generally educate themselves to look into the books that both Christine and Kathleen have recommended for a bit more understanding. Have a look for yourself. The information is fantastic and horrifying at the same time. Stacey, you have your hand up.
With the colonization came disease and alcohol.
Yep, that's correct. That's correct.
And more sugar than what they had ever had.
That's correct. Yeah. So I do remember in researching for one of my certificates that I've done that alcohol was actually introduced to the Indigenous people knowingly that it would cause problems within the communities and their tribes. It was to make them more docile and more accepting of sort of what was happening and less likely to notice what was going on. It was used as a controlled item. Kathleen again, yeah.
Stacey's just reminded me that the British brought diseases with them as well.
That's correct.
Which decimated populations of Aboriginal people.
That's correct. So with the discussions we've just had there, that pretty much answers everything for one of your assessment questions. So the events that the question asks you to describe what happened and the impact are the British colonisation and power imbalance, the loss of land and culture, the stolen generation, the introduction of alcohol, and the introduction of disease. So that is one of the main questions in your assessment. Why is kinship important to First Nations society? Yep, Stacey, sorry, I didn't see your hand go up there.
Okay. It gives them more role models. So where we just have our mum, our dad, aunties, uncles, we're looked at other family members as that role model, and we educate, we learn education, and they're used as role models in kinship.
Yep, that's correct. Yep. Kathleen.
So yeah, this sort of elaborates on what Stacey said a little bit. So where we have our nuclear families, they have Aboriginal people, they had many nations in Australia, and they the people within those nations, correct me if I'm wrong, were considered as kin, and they had elders they had elders for dispute resolution and all sorts of things, guidance, storytelling, and where was I going with this one? So women were considered as aunties, men were considered as uncles. You might also be referred to as brother or sister. It's, you know, quite a common thing to experience. And down here on the South Coast, actually, I experience that quite a lot. We've got quite a large Aboriginal population of mixed race, and they refer to you as sister or brother. If you're nice to them, if you're nice to people, if you're non-discriminatory towards them. And yeah, they work together as a community.
Yeah. And it is like the traditional nations and the tribes on them, they were more than just a tribe of collected people. It was a family dynamic. People had their roles and understood their roles, and others understood it. And they were very closely connected, as you had to be in a land such as Australia. You had to work together. It wasn't it still isn't a very forgiving continent. Rightio. So, going back, what are some of the legislations to protect the cultural safety of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia? Yep, Heidi. Are you still on mute? Stacey.
The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Act of 2005.
Yep, yeah, that's it. That's fantastic. And that's quite a recent act, which is unfortunate. I talk about how some of our acts are quite old and maybe outdated. It's just a shame this one's so recent it hasn't been included or updated more as a solid act longer ago. Ian, you're on mute, sorry.
What about the Land Act?
Yep, that's another act that protects Indigenous people.
Does it even actually? I mean, that's what I heard. Does that Land Act actually work?
I think you'd need someone smarter than me to to discuss that. Stacey.
So we have Aboriginal background, as does my partner. And yeah, it does. So they recently had an issue where some trees were removed on a piece of land that they were actually, oh, sorry, it was an artifact. An artifact was found on a piece of land that they were excavating and working on, and they had to get an elder in from that area, so the Darug country. They had to get an elder in to actually do a whole blessing and everything else to get the artifact back to where it needed to be.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and hopefully that answers your question there, Ian. Kathleen.
Just on the same topic, that's great, Stacey, that they were able to, that the Aboriginal people had some power in that situation. So there was, when I say recent, it might have been a couple of years ago now, when one of the mining companies in Western Australia blew up an Aboriginal site of significance. And down here on the coast, actually, there's a women's burial ground that the Aboriginal people don't want, they don't want it interfered with, and unfortunately they've lost their case. So whatever the project is, and I can't remember what it is, whatever the project is, it's going to go ahead on this women's Aboriginal burial ground.
It's sad. It's
yeah, it's to do with women and babies, actually. It's really tragic.
It is devastating. It's unfortunate that some of these, I won't mention names of companies and stuff like that, but it is quite unfortunate. It's sort of your money talks in a lot of situations like that. If you've sort of got the money or you want to put something there, then you've got the right of way, which is a terrible way to go. The amount of stuff that we are losing quite frequently just because, just speaking from experience in Bundaberg here, they're looking at putting a coal mine in right on top of one of the best agricultural sites in Queensland, and it's only 4 kilometres from the Great Barrier Reef and only 10 kilometres from one of the largest turtle nesting sites in Queensland. So it'll disrupt all of that. But anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole. So, as I was saying in our previous session, it is important to know the legislation so you know what's going on, you know what's right and wrong. Maybe if you witness someone in a situation where you don't feel right about it, and they definitely don't feel right about it, but they don't have the confidence to come forward, you with the knowledge can come forward. You can speak to them, or you can go along the right lines to assist them. Okay, so just having a look at a couple other questions. Well, I'll open it up to the floor. We will do a case study soon. Does anyone have any trouble with this unit so far? Has there been any trouble or anything like that they would like to bring up? Ian, yep.
It's just when I was studying this unit, I just felt like like even though there are many laws and regulations to protect the Aboriginal rights, their lands, their culture, everything, but the people, the government per se isn't ready to accept it.
That is
That's
true.
kind of like that's a question that whenever I start reading this unit, that's the only question comes into my mind is like, okay, you have these laws and regulations, you say this, you say that, but why aren't you guys accepting it?
Yeah, it's shocking that it's not. I think as the next question we'll discuss is, I think it's a bit of cultural blindness too. Sort of still, there's a lot of bias around different cultures, and that it is a shame, and it is happening. Yes, Kathleen.
I think too that what Ian's just raised, I think too that because of their generational trauma, Aboriginal people do feel disempowered.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I might be wrong, but I think they don't know. They don't. A lot of them just don't know what the laws are that are supposed to be there to protect them. And, you know, they throw their hands in the air and say too hard because they don't have an understanding of their rights. And they feel that they've been beaten and you know, they feel as if they've been given a raw deal and that's going to continue. So I think they can be perceived as being fairly passive because of that intergenerational trauma.
That's it. Yep, back to Ian. Yep.
I really disagree with it.
Do you?
I mean, I'm sorry to say that, to be so blunt.
No, that's all right.
Because I'm coming from Aboriginal background. I mean, not Australian Aboriginal background, but my own country, I'm a traditional owner of my land. Like comparing to Aboriginal Australians, the traditional owners of Australia, and comparing to my people, we have like 0.2% of the whole population of Sri Lanka that we people are there. And you people are like Aboriginals, there are like 3.8%, I reckon. I'm not sure about it. I'm not gonna say that. But the government should be like, in my government, they always says that, okay, here's the land, this is the land, this is the only thing that I'm gonna give you guys. Do it, live in it, do whatever you want to do it. This is your land, stay as you please. Like, there should be like, if they tried, like, and they sometimes the government itself trying to say that in my government used to say that if you like to get into this modern culture, you are welcome. But if you don't want to do it, here's the place, go there, stay there, do whatever you guys want to do. But I don't see that particular thing. It's like they don't say that, because all the papers that I read is they always says that adapt or go extinct. That's the underline of Australian government, and this system is trying to tell the Aboriginals of in Australia. I mean, that's what I got.
No, thank you for sharing. It is a deep and complex situation. I don't think it's I think there does definitely need to be more voices put forward and more ears opened up for it. But yeah, I think as a personal opinion, I think it's all to do with money. It's people's decisions always go where the money lies, and unfortunately that means a lot of things that are beautiful in their own way are crushed. And I think that is a very, very sad reality. Kathleen.
Look, I think that having a government say adapt or go and live somewhere else is a form of genocide. You know, they're saying integrate into our society and follow our rules, but Aboriginal people have their own law and their own rules.
It needs to
And
work both
we've got,
ways.
and the Aboriginal people never ceded their land to the British. So it's their land, and yet they are being subjected to Australian law. So I really think that that is part of genocide. It's, you know, it's part of making them comply with and be what they view as a typical Australian. You know, I think then the immigration argument comes in there as well. And they say, well, people from other cultures are being welcomed and all the rest of it. But these people have come in here because they've had a need or they've had a choice to come into Australia. However, the Aboriginal people were here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They've never ceded the country. And they're being told to live by our laws. And as Blake says, and as he, you know, we've given two examples with the coal mine, I've forgotten the name of it, in Queensland, and as well as the Perth destruction, or not Perth, the Western Australian destruction of that Aboriginal site, the disrespect for a burial ground, and they're just saying to the Aboriginal people, you've got to do it our way. And that's not the Aboriginal people's way of doing things. So, you know, and so they're traumatized by the fact that they're being told to go against the grain, to go against what it means to be an Aboriginal person.
The trauma continues. It sort of goes like folds upon itself constantly. It's sort of a never-ending cycle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yes, Stacey.
Can I say the trauma does continue because we lose cultural identity
Yeah.
and belonging. And not only that, like even as coming from a stolen generation and trying to get back in with culture, it's very hard for me because in their eyes, I'm trying to come in the Western way to manipulate, use the system, all these other issues. So again, like this is part of my identity and part of my culture, and I've lost that because of the trauma that my family went through, that now my own mob are struggling to accept me in Kamilaroi. So it's, you know, it's goes both ways, unfortunately, and it's hard. It is hard.
And that relates back to the kinship that we were discussing before. It's that broken kinship. It's not there. The people that sort of been left out. They don't have that connection where they can go in and sort of rejoin. It's the communities over a lot of the place are disappearing and are going, which is a shame too. Yeah, Heidi, you had something to say.
Yeah, I guess to end the cycle of issues of Aboriginal people, I guess someone from their communities will take the higher space, I mean, to penetrate politics, and someone from them will going to be the representation of their communities that will protect them and fight their rights. I guess that's because First Nation people has been living so much in fear and discrimination. So in that way, I guess they could that representatives could protect the whole First Nation people in general. So I guess that's the main solution for that.
Thank you very much for sharing. And it's and I think like when think of personally, it's like how many times can you be knocked down before you want to get back up again? Like, is it worth the fight? And like there's 65,000 years worth of fight there, and it's how many times can you be knocked down? And it is the people that keep striving to have their voices heard that should be really applauded. They speak for a lot of people on not an easy topic. Kathleen.
I just want to you know, reaffirm what Stacey said and not being welcomed into a community in which she should belong. And, you know, your comment on, yes, it's all about the money, and your comment, Blake, on community as well. And that's all part of genocide. It's part of decimating communities so that Stacey doesn't feel as if she belongs in with the mob. And other people won't feel as if they belong with the mob. So it's just this gradual disintegration of these communities that they had built up. And that's genocide. And I won't say any more.
It's been a good discussion here, guys, especially around this unit and stuff to be aware of, just in general. It's good to have these open conversations. And if you have people around you who have experienced stuff like this, or they are a part of the Indigenous community, and have experienced this trauma, start that discussion, understand it a bit more, and find out like how it affects them and how it's going on, because it's something that's sort of hidden from public eye a lot, and it's normally put across as misbehavior or acting out and stuff like that. They see the effect, they don't see the cause a lot of the world. So it is, do your own research and find out and speak to people. And the more people speak to each other and understand each other, it's the easier the solution comes to hand. Rightio, so we'll move on to another question here. So it asks us to list 2 things about our own culture that may affect the way you perceive others. So there's no right or wrong answers. I'll let people list some themselves. Everyone's answers will be different too. It won't be exactly the same.
What is it? What is it again?
It is list 2 things about your own culture that may affect the way you perceive others.
Can I intervene there? I was brought up in Ireland, in Southern Ireland, and we were very sort of a Catholic society. There was very minority Protestant. And I think you might be aware of what went on in the north of Ireland, where it was majority Protestant and Presbyterian, and the Catholics were the minority. And the Catholics were the underdog in the north of Ireland. So I suppose growing up in Ireland, we were very prejudiced against Protestants, really. You know, they kind of regarded themselves as the superior race, so to speak, if you like, and sort of stuck to their stayed on their own. Now that's obviously changed hugely. This I'm going back 20 or 30 years ago now. When I was growing up, it was like that, but it's changed hugely, and people's attitudes have changed hugely. But you know, for a long time, Ireland was very, very much ruled by the Catholic Church, and you know, things have changed due to you know, the outing of sexual abuse that went on with the Catholic Church, and a lot of people have actually moved away from it, you know, and have stopped following Catholic, practicing their religion as a result. Yeah, so that's probably my experience of
that pretty much
cultural bias, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that essentially answers the question there. It is that was your culture and how you perceived others and how others perceived it. And in Ireland, yes, it was a big boiling pot that ended up boiling over.
Yeah, and you know what I mean. That kind of we wouldn't have too many you know, colored people. Like, you know, I remember, you know, one time kind of being in the car with my dad, and some there was some black guy, and he says, "Oh, look at Paddy Murphy back from his holidays." You know, they'd make these kind of jokes off the cuff.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it was like. You know, it was pathetic. Like, we did one Chinese restaurant in town.
Yeah.
You know,
But yeah, that the culture too. Like I'll bring
very,
up.
very insular.
Yeah, I'll bring up one of mine. I'm fifth generation Central Queensland, so my entire family have been stockmen for a very very long way back. We actually trace our ancestry back to Ireland. We come
Oh,
over on
yeah.
one of the big ships. We've found grave records and that. But yeah, we were able to join the expansion into the centre of Queensland. And some of the cultural stuff that my granddad has passed down, I won't repeat here, and I don't think it should ever be repeated.
It probably isn't appropriate after my Paddy Murphy comment. Yeah.
No, that's all right. That's all right. But yeah, just some of the things that he said the Stockman did to the First Nations people is just absolutely appalling. But unfortunately, granddad's of that generation, he's like, it was happening. It was just happening.
Yeah,
it's like, well, it's not
right.
right. But yeah, that is a cultural thing, which is well, I'm lucky enough now that I know that stuff is wrong. My generation knows that stuff was wrong. We realize how damaging that type of stuff was. But the further back you go, the less likely it's. But yeah, Kathleen.
The other thing is sexism. You know, once upon a time, working in the operating theatres, predominantly nurses were females, and the surgeons were, and anaesthetists were predominantly male. And the number of dirty jokes that would fly around those operating theatres were absolutely dreadful. It was just really dreadful and disrespectful. And I don't know if it was just a male versus female thing, and I don't think it was. I was also exposed, I mean, you're exposed to your social group, and the males check out the girls to see whether or not they're attractive, or whether or not they're fat, or thin, or whether, you know, whether or not they look nice, talk nicely, all the rest of it. So, you know, sexism was a real power imbalance not so many years ago. And I found now that sexism really is being addressed, and that there's a lot of all of that type of, you know, dirty jokes and slurs and groping, and it's not acceptable anymore. So it's on the wane.
I don't think it was ever really acceptable. I think it was the same thing. It's the loudest voices sort of push down the smallest voices in it, sort of as a thing. It's I'm right, you're wrong type situation, which is unfortunately stuff like that still happens. My background in the construction industry, you see a lot of comments like that because it is rare to have a lady in the construction. That it's more getting more common, but rare to have a lady on your work crew in it. And some of the stuff that's said sort of around the place, behind their backs, and directly to their faces is absolutely appalling.
Yeah. The other thing too is the expectations of women and girls. So when I was growing up, I had a brother who was allowed to study. And we came from a family of 7 children, and he was allowed to study, and I was not allowed to study. And I used to study at night with a torch under my blankets, because I was only a girl, and I would be getting married and raising children. And it was quite interesting though, because my mother worked full time as a school teacher. But it was that, you know, perception that the girl's place is in the kitchen, and the man goes out to work. So we've only just emerged from that, and I think that's as a result of economic pressures on family. I think that's where it started, but there's economic pressures on family.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Kathleen. So we've gone through this hour. I'll stop the recording now. So our first question is, describe at least one situation when you have promoted First Nations cultural safety. If you haven't done this yourself, describe a time when you have seen someone else do this. Yep, Stacey, yep.
Yeah, I've got a time. I currently volunteer with an Aboriginal program for preschool children, and we've got a yarning circle at another place, and there's a community garden that goes on to that. Like, so the cultural circle's out the front, and then there's the community garden. They stuck the bush tucker garden right down the end, and they've pushed it completely away from, I guess, the cultural side, which is the yarning circle. It was entered into a competition in which it won. Now they had to distribute photos, and she put the photos of the yarning circle in this competition, but it was never ran by the elders to get permission to actually put this photo through. So, you know, where some elders were like, that was wrong to do, others were like, oh, well, I guess she kind of, you know, she won, it was what it was. It was still, in some of the people that I work with, very disrespectful, because she did no involvement in with the Aboriginal people, and she's added something that was part of our culture to this, won it, and never involved anybody into it.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep, okay. Yeah, right. That's, yeah. And that's the thing I was discussing before just before, was that you get people that think they have the best intentions at heart, but they're not listening. They're sort of closed off, and it's like, no, this is it. This is the right way to do it. We should do it this way, without taking any other opinions into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, she's very proud of her garden, and it's such a beautiful piece together. But yeah, I think, like, you're right from there. I don't think she took into consideration how it would affect, especially one of the ladies, one of the aunts that had a lot to do with the garden and wasn't even recognized. So it's kind of like, yeah, it was like it didn't matter what everybody else's opinion was, as long as it won, but her intentions weren't, I don't know, the best, maybe.
No, that's right. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Who else wants to answer it? So I'll read it out again, just so we're clear on it. So it's, describe at least one situation where you have promoted First Nations cultural safety. If you haven't done this, describe a time where you've seen someone else do this. It's okay. There's no wrong answers here, guys. It's up to you guys to just an experience. It might have been through a book, as Christine and Kathleen were saying, as an example. Yep, Kathleen.
So do you mean having read the book? And I mean, I feel, and I might be wrong, Stacey, I hope, and actually in our study group, I did promote the interests of Aboriginal people. I stuck up for them. And I've done a lot of reading, and I'm, you know, I've got that overall concern about this group of people who are marginalised in our society. So where I live in an area that has a lot of Aboriginal people in it. Now, when I came from Melbourne, and I came from a fairly well-to-do suburb, I got divorced, and we had to split our assets, and I bought this house in Batemans Bay. And when I first started meeting people in Batemans Bay, the first thing they'd ask was, where do you live? And I'd say, I live in Country Club Drive. where in Country Club Drive? And I'd say, well, does that matter? And they'd say, well, yes, where in Country Club Drive? And I'd describe where I lived in Country Club Drive, and they'd say, is it on the high side or the low side? And there's this thing in Bateman's Bay about living amongst or within the Aboriginal community. And there are a lot of Aboriginal people or a lot of Aboriginal households around me. And people are always, you know, commenting on this and saying that I don't belong here. Not Aboriginal people, but other white people say, oh, you don't belong there. And I find that really offensive. I just find it extraordinarily offensive. At one stage, there was a fellow next door who was incarcerated, and his partner had 4 young children under the age of 5, and she was there on her own, she was there on her own trying to look after 4 children under the age of 5. And I was at home at that stage, and I'd hear her getting irritated with the children. And at that point, she was very happy for me to go into the house and take the children. I'd gone to Kmart and bought some toys, to take the children into my house where they'd play for an hour and a half, maybe 2, until she was ready to come in and get them. But apart from that, there was just no assistance for her at all. So, you know, I think I made a bit of a difference with that one family. But the other thing that I do is that I stand up for my neighbourhood when people try to talk it down. It's surrounded by a lot of streets with bird names like Ibis Court. There's a whole lot of bird names, and it's sort of said in Bateman's Bay that you never buy a house in a street that has the name of a bird, because it's populated by Aboriginal people. And on Facebook a couple of times, you know, one person said, is this really a thing? And my response was no, absolutely not. So, you know, it's just this appalling bigotry that needs
it's a cultural bias too. People sort of assume the area is going to be rough or stuff like that, just from the population of it, which is
yeah.
It's good that you stand up for it too.
What's that?
It's good that you stand up for it too, and you do make your voice heard on Facebook. That it's not.
Well, and the thing too is that if you look at the incarceration rates of young Aboriginal men, I reckon that if he was faced with similar charges, if he was standing next to a fellow who was faced with similar charges, who was not of Aboriginal descent, I don't think that person would have been incarcerated. But this guy, it was on some driving charges. He was incarcerated for 1.5 years on driving charges. So,
hey,
it's not very hard to get into jail if you're of Aboriginal descent.
Thank you for sharing, Kathleen. So does anyone else want to, I'll move on to the next one anyway. So the next one is describe 3 potential, sorry, I'm in tongue tied. I always do this. I'd read in my head, but I read faster in my head than my mouth can move. Describe 3 potential cultural safety issues for First Nations people in your current or previous work context. So if you are looking at a certain industry that you're going into, just use that as an example. So I'll read that out again, hopefully not getting tongue-tied this time. So it's describe 3 potential cultural safety issues for First Nations people in your current or previous work context? Yep, Kathleen.
Sorry. So as a registered nurse, traditionally in Australia, nurses and doctors have been of a white background, and nurses looking after Aboriginal people, really need to be aware of cultural issues that surround Aboriginal people, and in particular, the concept of kinship. For example, when an Aboriginal person might be in palliative care, about to die, then a large number of people may attend the bedside. So they do things differently. Their customs are different. Their expectations are different. The way they give birth is different. But now we're finding more people of Aboriginal descent becoming registered nurses. And I mean, that's great because they understand their needs more.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I do remember hearing a story from the Northern Territory. I had some close friends working in Darwin for a bit, and one of the ladies from First Nations area, which was their land, fully run by them, actually started to get dementia. And other family come along and sort of took her away to get her all checked out and stuff like this. And she wasn't accepted back into the community. She was sort of forced out, and the community didn't want to accept her back in. They didn't know what the people had done to her and stuff like that, which is quite sad. They were fully prepared to look after this lady with dementia. But yeah, she was taken away against her will and to do all these tests and checkups and all that. And yeah, they wouldn't accept her back, which is sort of a huge misunderstanding on the people, again, trying to help think they know what's right and what should be done, going completely against the people that should be listened to. Right, what are some other potential cultural safety issues for First Nations people? Kathleen again?
Yeah. So back to the registered nursing thing. I had a so-called friend who worked at a major Melbourne hospital with me in the operating theatres, and she did a swap with somebody who lived in the Northern Territory at Alice Springs, and she went over there to get some experience. And the general attitude of the white doctors and nurses towards Aboriginal people was really disgusting. And this woman came back saying things like, Aboriginal people have thicker skulls than white people. So a whack over the head with a rock doesn't hurt them as badly.
That's I have heard misinformation like that before, and yeah, it is shocking.
Yeah.
Right, Stacey.
Stereotyping.
That is, yep, stereotyping. Because it can be dangerous. And look, as the example Kathleen just gave, the assumption that the misinformation has been passed, they've got thicker skulls, they could take a hit to the head a lot better. Like, picture how dangerous a comment like that could be taken seriously by a medical professional. Like, it's stereotyping, yeah. Does anyone else have any to add? Yep, Stacey again, fire away.
Systematic discrimination, so lack to healthcare and other service providers.
Yep. Fantastic. Okay, one more. Does anyone else have any they would like to add? Yep, Kathleen again.
A reluctance for Aboriginal people to seek out healthcare,
Yep,
for
that
example,
is-
or to seek out any help.
Yep. And that could be combined back in with that intergenerational trauma. Like, what's going to happen? What are they going to tell me? Fantastic. Rightio. So moving on to another question. Explain how cultural safety for First Nations people. Explain how cultural safety for First Nations people may be improved in your own workplace practices. Does this conflict in any way with your cultural bias? Yeah, go for it, Stacey.
I'm just going to say, creating an environment where Aboriginal people feel safe and respected.
Yeah.
And being open-minded as well.
Yeah. And I think that's a big one too, is remaining like the way I would answer it is to be more open-minded and understand the issue at hand rather than using any stereotypes which I've heard in the past. Be open-minded and accept them as people themselves. Don't treat them any differently. Yep. Heidi, I'll go Heidi first if you want to go first.
So I have nothing to say, but I just want to say that I am just new here in Australia, and I have just a few information about Aboriginal, and hearing those information about you and everybody is just gives me a bit kind of scary or I mean a concern that this kind of thing happening still right now in society. So I guess it should come first from the society itself, that the acceptance for Aboriginal people should be there, should be 100% there, and the inclusivity is already there. Because if a society doesn't accept the Aboriginal people 100%, so this problem will become endlessly, not resolved. So it should be in us to be the solution of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that, and that is very, very true. And I think that's with Australia's history of the colonization, and then the put down of the Aboriginal people and sort of moved out so the Westerners can move in. It's never really been resolved or spoken about to a high degree on everyone's mind. There are still people in Australia with very, very discriminative views on the entire situation, and they're just not willing to hear it out. And I think it is also a generational thing. As I was mentioning, my granddad, who is genuinely a lovely person, has some very strong and shocking views in the situation. That's going back in generations.
Can I add something?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because I'm from in Philippines, and the Philippines has different kind of tribes, which the same like Aboriginal people here. As I have said a while ago, someone who should step up or go in a higher space to be the representative of the tribes or the communities from the Aboriginal people to end this kind of problem, because through that representative will create a law to protect the rights, and to always feel they are included in the society, and also from different workplace, and feeling that kind of accepted and included in society is very, very important. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it is, yeah. It's sort of be similar to, because the Philippines was controlled by the Dutch for a bit 70 years ago. The Philippines got its independence, am I right?
Yeah, Japanese and Dutch.
Yeah, and it's sort of the rebuilding that would have had to happen after that, and the fight for it. I think it's with the Aboriginals. It's sort of it wasn't as big of a conflict as like as colonization sort of never really slowed down. It kept sort of going. Those problems kept sort of building. There wasn't sort of a rescinding of the British from Australia. I think is what's wrong with a lot of the issues at the moment. I think it was none of it's ever really been resolved. Stacey, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I do. Support Aboriginal people through self-advocating or advocate for them.
Yep, that is fantastic. And that's the best way to do it is the self-advocation. Encourage them to advocate for themselves. If not, walk with them, advocate with them. Kathleen.
Just going back to Stacey's point about feeling safe and respected. I think respect is shown when we take that person-centered approach and let the Aboriginal people drive tell us what they want to do in terms of their care. I think that's a big one. And I just want to reassure Heidi on something. I want to say don't be afraid, because the Australian respect for Aboriginal people is increasing greatly. We now, for example, respect land management techniques, and that's come after we've had catastrophic bushfires. And we've realised, well, if we'd looked after the land the way the Aboriginal people did, then we wouldn't have had these bushfires. There's also a move, as Stacey referred to bush tucker. So it's respect for Aboriginal food. The other thing too is that we're now getting increased representation of Aboriginal people in Parliament. And if we've got Aboriginal people in Parliament, then hopefully they will be able to have an impact on the laws that would otherwise be passed or presented and passed by a white government.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thanks for sharing. Ian's got his hand up.
I think before any Aboriginal get into the governmental system, the government should change their constitution, because the Australian constitution is the only constitution which was passed in pre-World War I and World War II era, which was drafted in 1898 and approved in 1900s.
Yeah,
they have just changed the laws, but the constitution is the same. So, like, it's a transparent thing. Even though we get, like, all the Aboriginals get together and get one guy into the government or the parliament, what's the percentage of all the rest of the parliament gonna hear them? Because when the constitution is the same old white Western white supremacy complex, when the constitution is made by one of stuff like that, then they're not going to listen to anyone. They'll be like, nope, you're just a normal person, nothing else. Pass.
That's it. And there aren't changes that need to be done, but it's the same thing with, I think we need to make each generation more and more aware, like, and bring new ideas with each new generation that's entering into politics now. And the more we do it, the more we listen and the more we speak about it, the more understanding that will go around. Right, we might do one more question from here. Within your current or previous workplace policies and procedures, is there any guidance on communicating with First Nations people? Discuss how this is helpful to you and your service. That one might be a bit tricky without a bit of background knowledge. We might pick another one here. Okay, here we go. Provide an example of an environment, program, or service set up in your current or previous work position that is culturally supportive of a First Nations community. So I'll read that again. Provide an example of an environment, program, or service set up in your current or previous workplace that is culturally supportive of the First Nations community. Yep, Stacey.
Yeah, like I said, I live in the Highlands and we've got a place called Tarmore Community Hub. And at Tarmore, that hub there specifically, which is run through Community Links Wellbeing, is specific to domestic violence and homelessness. But they do run the program. So like they run the preschool program. So we get certain people come in that might educate children on the bush tucker. We run them through, so every Wednesday we'll run them through programs and we'll teach them about the different animals or the different dances or the different instruments or tools that you'll use for dancing, like clapsticks, for example. And then we run the holiday program for children of school age, where we might do men's business, where it's men or boys and men from 5 and up, or we'll do women's business, which is for girls 5 and up.
Fantastic, fantastic. That does sound good. Thank you for sharing. Would anyone else like to share an example? No, that's all right. Rightio. So I reckon we'll wrap up tonight's session. I hope that we've been able to cover enough for everyone to get a bit of assistance in this unit if you haven't already started and stuff like that. And I hope that all this information has been helpful for just a bit of a better understanding. So this meeting has been recorded, so it will be sent out to you the regular way. I'm not entirely sure how that works myself, how it's sent out, but it will send out, so you can come back and re-watch it and stuff like that to pick up more and for a bit of help. But for the last 15 minutes, I'm going to open the floor. Is there anything anyone would like to add? If you've been quiet for most of the session, I encourage you to speak up now. I'm always open to feedback too, if you want to provide some feedback. I think I'll be helping everyone out for the next couple of weeks in this space. So any feedback you have for me, fire it away at me. I'm open to it. Or any last points for this session. So the floor's open. Yep, Stacey.
Blake, I just have a question. So one of the questions in our assessment quiz is about cultural celebration, and we've got to pick one. And so when they're saying cultural, they're talking about everything, aren't they? Sorry, I just need specifics sometimes, so it's hard for me to answer a question if I don't have specifics.
I did see that, and I did think the same thing. So
I've picked like Albuquerque, New Mexico, with a hot air balloon festival that they run.
Yeah, well, it is. I did notice that too. I think though, with how what the unit's focus is, it should be Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander. I think
they've got the two. So they've got the Aboriginal Torres Strait, so what they celebrate NAIDOC week or
There's NAIDOC week and
bridging the
there's-
gap. But
Yep.
then there's the like, so what's another cultural? And I was like, oh well, I guess New Mexico is New Mexico, so they celebrate a festival and have a celebration for hot air balloons. But are they talking like culture as in like something that would be Hindu or something that would be I don't know, in another country doing something else? I don't know.
It is. I did notice it before. I can't find it off the top of my head. Can you tell me what task and question it is?
Yes. Okay. So it is on the Promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander 1 of 4. And
Yep.
it is question number 2, which is research cultural celebrations, one from the First Nation culture and one from another culture different to your
Yep.
own.
So yeah. Is there a follow-up from it? Yeah, right. Yeah. So just it could be any other culture around the world.
Okay. So then the Albuquerque hot air balloon would be all right.
Yep. Like keep on, because
already-
you've got to look at the questions that follow. So so what is the celebration? What does it represent? How is it celebrated? And how can we share this information with the community? So just as long as you could fit that example into what it's asking there, then go for it.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
No worries. Rightio, has anyone else got anything to add? Any other questions? Yep, Heidi.
Yes, I'm actually in a Promote Original Torres Strait Islander Cultural Safety to T to 3 of 4. So I'm currently doing a research report.
Yep.
So I guess I have to ask this if I need to record it or video it, because it's some kind of assessment.
What was
that
that
I need
task 3 of 4?
It is a research report brief background of the purpose of the research here, like that, something like that. And I need to talk somebody from Aboriginal or
Yeah, I did have a read of that, and I have had the question raised. I think your best way to go about that is to reach out to our learning support team. Just in case, I don't want to say the wrong thing, in case in case you answer it wrong and have to go back and redo it. So I advise reaching out to our learning support team and just asking them to clarify what it means, because it is a bit of a odd request there.
Yes, it's okay. So regarding with what we tackle right now is a really big help to understand those kind of questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it is a bit tricky. Thank you for asking. But I might stop the recording there.